In our next story, we're going to go back to the Old Testament. We're going to read Daniel chapter 5, verses 1 through 6, 17 through 28, and 30, just so we don't take way too long on this. King Belshazzar gave a great banquet for 1,000 of his nobles and drank wine with them. While Belshazzar was drinking his wine, he gave orders to bring in the gold and silver goblets that Nebuchadnezzar, his father, had taken from the temple in Jerusalem, so that the king and his nobles, his wives, and his concubines might drink from them. So they brought in the gold goblets that had been taken from the temple of God in Jerusalem, and the kings and his nobles, his wives, and the concubines drank from them. As they drank the wine, they praised the gods of gold and silver, of bronze, iron, wood, and stone. Suddenly, the fingers of a human hand appeared and wrote on the plaster of the wall, near the lampstand in the royal palace. The king watched it as it wrote. His face turned pale, and he was so frightened that his legs became weak and his knees were knocking. So he goes and he tries to get somebody to read it, but nobody can read it. So finally, the prophet Daniel comes in. And Daniel answered the king, "You may keep your gifts and give your rewards to someone else. Nevertheless, I will read the writing for the king and tell him what it means. Your Majesty, the Most High God, gave your father Nebuchadnezzar sovereignty and greatness and glory and splendor. Because of the high position he gave him, all the nations and peoples of every language dreaded and feared him. Those the king wanted to put to death, he put to death. Those he wanted spared, he spared. Those he wanted to promote, he promoted. And those he wanted to humble, he humbled. But when his heart became arrogant and hardened with pride, he was deposed from his royal throne and stripped of his glory. He was driven away from people and given the mind of an animal. He lived with the wild donkeys and ate grass like the ox. His body was drenched with the dew of heaven until he acknowledged that the Most High God is sovereign over all kingdoms on earth and sets them over anyone he wishes. But you, Belshazzar, his son, have not humbled yourself, though you knew all of this. Instead, you have set yourself up against the Lord of heaven. You had the goblets from his temple brought to you, and you and your nobles, your wives, and your concubines drank wine from them. You praised the gods of silver and gold, of bronze, iron, wood, and stone, which cannot see, nor hear, nor understand. But you did not honor the God who holds in his hand your life and all your ways. Therefore, he has sent the hand that wrote the inscription. And this is the inscription that was written: Mene, Mene, Tekel, Parsin. Here's what those words mean. Mene, God has numbered the days of your reign and brought it to an end. Tekel, you have been weighing on the scales and found wanting. And Peres or Parsin, your kingdom is divided and given to the Medes and the Persians. That very night, Belshazzar, king of the Babylonians, was slain. Now this is like a real spooky ghost story. Like someone does something bad and immediately a hand appears out of nowhere and scratches a message into the wall. Nobody can read it until Daniel, who says, "You have disobeyed God. You did wrong, and you're going to be punished." And that very night, that king dies. Can't tell me that's not spooky.